All documents and household records are available on the video screen for immediate reference. Also at his disposal is an electronic correspondence machine, or home post office, which allows for instant written communication between individuals anywhere in the world.
The year was 2006, and Time magazine had named its Person of the Year. Its 2006 Person of the Year was, well, me. But it was also you. It was all of us. Yes, Time magazine had named the American people its Person of the Year. The cover had a computer with a mirror-like screen so that we could all marvel at what we had accomplished in cyberspace. Yes, the world was changing. We were making the world more accessible for the Joe Schmoes and Debbie homemakers. It was about you, about me, about the American dream. Yes, this tool was the World Wide Web, cyber technology. Whether on a phone or on a computer, we the people were changing the world. Yes, we were doing great things, and it would only get better. It was a great time to be an American, or even simply a citizen in our great cyber world.
New research is showing cell phone usage may be deadly, at least for bees. A Swiss research team conducted over 80 experiments and found calls from mobile phones cause bees to leave their hives and become disoriented.
Wait a minute, we're killing the bees? The more one looks at this, the worse it seems. Albert Einstein once said that if bees disappeared, man would only have 4 years left to live. Now we see that the bees are indeed disappearing. It started in America and has slowly spread to Europe. There are a lot of theories as to why this is happening. One of the leading ones is cell phones. So cell phones may or may not be causing the end of our civilization. And the more one looks into it, the worse things get.
Studies have been done that show that people are 50% more likely to get brain tumors from just 1 decade of cell phone use. Other studies suggest that cell phones are killing off brain cells, leading to possible dementia in younger and younger ages. In India, studies have been done to suggest that cell phones are lowering sperm counts.
This seems pretty bad. How did it become like this? I grew up watching technology blossom, and I've always had a natural fear, or rather, respect for the power it has. But there's a new generation who grew up alongside it, one that never knew a world without it. What kind of effect does that have on how someone lives their life?
I really feel there's 2 different populations that we're talking about here. If you're talking about adults and people currently in the 20s, they're probably living in 2 worlds. But for people under the age of 20, they live in an integrated world. Their experiences with the electronic media has really been integrated into their lives, so they don't experience it in 2 different ways.
I make decisions to turn off phones and to shut them off during dinners and to really feel free to disconnect. What I'd say, though, is it's easy not to do that. It's easier not to do that. And we think every beep of our phone is some life-important message that we have to check at that particular moment in time.
What it means to me about having real life and an online life is that they are constantly interacting, and that the online life is constantly pulling at my online life and all of ours. So I think they're integrated. I think they're constant. I think that online means that we never let go.
Cyberspace is the real world. It is the real world in the sense that when I go online, I am myself. I am a version of myself, but I'm also a version of myself talking to you.
We're getting used to immediate gratification from responses from people and interactions from people. So hearing from somebody right away instead of waiting for a phone call when you get home, now we have cell phones, we can get in contact with somebody immediately.
It's like a total lack of boundaries with all of our relationships with other people. And I really do not just mean that for kids. I think that adults are just as guilty, if not more so.
This person's texting that person across the room from them instead of talking with them. So I do think it inhibits it a little bit, that even when people are in the same room, they're still using technology to interact with each other.
Every week or every couple of months, things morph and they change, and it feels like you can't keep up in some ways.
We're trying to figure out what it means to be in cyberspace, what it means to be ourselves. Who are we as social beings out in a world where the sort of visual and auditory and tactile cues, the smells that we have when we see somebody face to face, that they're not there.
So we live in the cyber world now. We spend just as much time in cyberspace as we do on other aspects of our lives. That millions have just as much, if not more, of an identity online that they do in face-to-face meetings. But hey, we're Time Magazine's Person of the Year, right? I'm sure all the stuff that we're doing is good and pure.
Soon, the cruel underbelly of the internet would light up.
An online bully who waged a vicious campaign against dead teenagers and their families.
The problem with teens sending nude pictures has gotten so bad, the Montgomery Police Department recently charged one student for forwarding a nude video of a girl.
And this is the age of YouTube. I don't know if girls, you're seeing more and more of this, and I don't know if girls ever used to beat each other up like this.
Who died? Some suicidal slut?
Hey guys, how's it hanging?
The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. This is how it is to die. You end up looking like apple pie.
But this tragedy did turn a spotlight on a dark corner of teen life. Cyberbullying.
Cyberbullying.
Cyberbullying. Cyberbullying.
Cyberbullying.
Bullying.
Bullying. Bullies. Unrelenting cyberbullying by fellow students.
People are using cyber technology as a weapon against each other. In the past decade, we've seen giant leaps in technology, and during that time, we've also seen a spike in cyber cruelty and a breach in ethical behavior online. It goes by many names, but regardless of what it is called, it is dangerous, hurtful, and only becoming more prevalent in our society. One of the main ways people do this is through cyberbullying.
Cyberbullying is bullying that takes place through electronic media. And basically it entails the victimization of a single person or a group of people.
It's really just snowballed to such an intense level that we were kind of left reeling. I'm speaking from like a social worker, school social worker's point of view.
We've been studying cyberbullying since about 2000, 2001. And this started by me always being interested in sort of traditional school bullying and school violence and the school shootings of the late 90s. And back in 2000 and 2001, nobody else was studying this, and so we just started doing it. And we began by just talking with teens and parents and teachers, and we quickly realized that there was some things going on here. So we did a number of informal surveys, and our first formal survey was the spring of 2003, and even in that very first survey, we surveyed a few hundred kids online. We found that about a third of them had experienced some form of cyberbullying.
In 2003, I worked at Cal State Long Beach, and most of my students who are master students placed in the school system as school counselors in training would come back and talk with me about issues related to people being victimized through electronic media. I think that at that time it was through AOL instant messaging.
What I do remember is AOL. I remember instant messaging. That was the first time when I was teaching that kids were starting to go after each other.
Since technology has come along in the past few years, it's become cheaper, and access to it has become greater. So once it was available to like high school students and older, now it's been creeping downward into middle school and grade schools, and kids know how to get on the internet and do all sorts of things now. So I think that the rise in the cyberbullying has also been because the technology has become cheaper and then become more accessible, and also crept downward into younger ages as well.
I think we should take a moment to look at the power these cyberbullies have and what effect it has on the victims. Cyberbullying can take many forms, such as sending mean messages over the internet or cell phone, spreading rumors via text message, sending cruel or threatening messages via social networking sites or other websites, stealing someone's account information in order to change things about their account or send hurtful messages as that person, purposely pretending to be someone you are not online as to confuse or hurt someone else, taking on flattering photos of someone else via cell phones, webcams, or other digital devices, sexting or circulating sexual pictures or messages about someone else. And this is affecting a lot of youth in America. Roughly 40% of young people have been bullied while online, and 1 in 4 have had it happen more than once. 21% of kids have received cruel, mean-spirited, or threatening messages in cyberspace. 58% of kids admit to having been bullied or harassed in some way online. 53% of kids admit to having said something mean or hurtful while online. More than 1/3 have done it more than once. 58% of kids have remained silent about the abuse, not informing an adult about what has happened to them.
Well, when you talk about kids, I think that we have to talk about what's happening within our broader culture. And one of the things that I believe is happening in the broader culture is that there's been a diminishing of the threshold when people act aggressively.
I'll probably send an email where we would never have said that to their face or even on their phone. So it kind of gives people a little bit more power to not have that person right in front of their face. Makes them feel a little more comfortable about dogging them and digging them.
There is that feeling of no escape when it comes to cyberbullying, and one of the victims we talked to described it as being tethered to their tormentor.
With the previous schoolyard bully, people could get away from the bully and home was a safe place to get to. But I think that the world has changed so much in terms of the way we communicate and interact with each other. And young people are using technology in more and more involved ways. The old solution of getting away from the bully doesn't work any longer.
It's hard to disentangle the unique problems associated with that, but we know that for some kids, at least, the cyberbullying is much worse than the bullying, or it affects them more deeply, especially because technology is so important to them.
So I think part of the issue with cyberbullying is that it can so very quickly get out of control. It gets bigger than people ever expected it to get in some instances. And I think that is what makes it such a heavy burden to bear.
What I found is that kids that were 12 and 13 were trying to say they were 16 or 17, and that was inviting 16 and 17-year-old boys, if they're girls, to then interact with them, which I felt was the true danger in that, when sophomores and juniors are trying to talk to 6th grade girls.
And so you have a 7th grader who posts something that is totally appropriate for a 7th grader to post. Suddenly, you get the 10th grader, or the 11th grader, or the 12th grader, or some other 7th grader who happens to have an older brother or sister, decides, oh, I think I'm going to pounce on this kid right now because that was a really stupid thing to say. And suddenly, it's like freaking like Lord of the Flies.
You know, it's not just 600 kids in the cafeteria. It's potentially millions of people who are looking at your photograph and reading comments about you indicating that you're fat, that you smell bad, that you dress poorly, that you're ugly. Very, very hurtful sorts of statements.
You know, it's just so easy to do, so much easier to do, and it spreads so much quicker. You know, you can be on the internet or your phone 24/7 and have it spread out there, and they know that that's a great way to get at somebody.
Becomes an intolerable burden, and it's very difficult for a young person to brush something like that off because the words are so serious and just cut to the bone.
The public interest was piqued with some high-profile cases. Megan Myers,